Welcome to Module 5, Part 1. Data Classification and Controls. I'm A.K.Asokan. Data labeling. Data classification and labeling is very important in order to provide the required level of security and access control to the data. Private organizations may decide their own data classification schemes. The government classified and labeled data as top secret, secret, and confidential. The unauthorized disclosure expected to cause exceptionally grave damage to the national security if the top secret data is leaked out. If it is a secret data, the unauthorized disclosure expected to cause serious damage to the national security. Similarly, unauthorized disclosure of the confidential data will cause damage to the national security. So, if the top secret data is leaked out, it will cause exceptionally grave damage to the national security. And if it is the secret data which is leaked out, the serious damage to the national security. And if it is confidential data, it will cause damage to the national security. There are other additional labels like unclassified data that is not sensitive, SBU sensitive but unclassified, and for official uses only. Disclosure of these type of data will not cause any threat to the nation. Data labeling. The private sector companies do not use any predefined label across the industries. They adopt their own policies as internal use only and proprietary. What is suitable for the management, they decide the classification of the data and labeling accordingly. Such classification schemes are documented and communicated throughout the organization for the users to understand. The most critical security step is the process of locating sensitive information, because all the information of the organization we cannot protect because there will be a lot of data which is not very sensitive. But locating the sensitive information and labeling it under a classification is the most crucial security step. Proper classification of the data and labeling is really crucial. Once it is labeled properly, then we can effectively implement the access control mechanism. So the classification main objective is to provide the access control mechanism. Let's now understand some terminologies. Data owners. Data owners are responsible for the protection decisions, and hence they identify the classification of the data. So the responsibility of the owners are to identify the data and the classification. Data owners ensure confidentiality, integrity, and availability of such data. They are not the people who really do the job, but they ensure that the CIA triad, the CIA is provided to the sensitive data. Owners will classify the asset and define the value and decide what level of security must be provided to such classified assets. They decide the value of the content and accordingly classify the labels, and then decide what level of protection required for such a data. Data custodians. A custodian typically does the protection work by ensuring it is properly stored, backup is created regularly, and the data is safe. So custodians are the people who really do the job. Custodians implement the security task as advised by the owners. As advised by the owners, the custodians implement the security. They are implementers. Implementation, monitoring, and backing up the data, ensuring it is safe, is the responsibility of the custodians. So the data owners advises the protection level decision and the custodians implement it. Handling of the data by the end user. The end user have to be educated and trained to handle such classified data in order to have an effective handling of the data throughout the organization. access control mechanism anyway come into picture here. PII stands for personally identifiable information. Any information that can identify an individual or trace back to identify person is non-personally identifiable information. Your passwords and PINs, your educational records, your driving license, your medical records and passport number, everything is PII. PII is personal to individual. Nowadays, when you go to the shopping, if you give away your mobile number to the shops and once it got published in any online database, you will see that the items you have required or inquired or purchased will be displayed as advertisements in the right side of your screen when you browse something else. Personal information can reveal your shopping habits, your location, browsing history, etc., which somehow the hackers required at some point of time to hack you out. Retaining records. Retaining and maintaining the information asset is known as record retention. The organization decides how long it has to keep the information, and after that it can be destroyed. The law of the land defines certain period of time. In certain countries, the law of the land defines certain mandatory retention period. Say, for example, the data has to be kept safe for 6 years or 7 years. And the organization must be in tune with the law of the land. For example, if there is a government regulation that the data has to be retained for 6 or 7 years, the company policy also must adhere to that regulation. As far as the business need and the data protection is concerned, we must collect only what information needed for the business. We have to justify the business need to collect and store such information and protect it from being misused or given to a third party. While we use the data, there are privacy implications. Privacy-related concept for the PII is not discussed in this course as it is beyond the scope of this program. Moving to the data retention and archival. According to the company policy, once the retention period has ended, the data has to be destroyed. Data destruction, there are so many ways: purging, wiping, degaussing, clearing, physical destruction of the media. There are many ways. Depending upon the classification of the data destruction methods are to be adopted. Mere deleting can retrieve the data very easily from the disk. You have to use other methods. Wiping is a method which overwrites the storage media multiple times. Degaussing is using a very strong electromagnetic field to destroy all the magnetically stored data. Another method is physically breaking the media into tiny pieces like what we do with the printed papers, so that it cannot be reconstructed to a useful state. Please follow the continuation part. Thank you.